So
6:01.
next year, and I've never been there.
Okay.
either.
1 second.
Preparing to start.
Is it?
I gotta talk to you about my.
Next year. I've never been there.
Oh, hold on, sorry.
Beautiful.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, it's 6 o'clock and a minute past. So we'll call the Wood Village City Council meeting to order for October 10th, 2023. Pledge of allegiance, our land acknowledgement statement. Counselor, want to read?
Yeah, I'm ready. So be happy to do that, Mayor. The Chinookian peoples, known as the Clackamas and Cascades, are known as the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of the Nechocli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gatherings and stewardship from the Wapato fields and the fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systematic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective works of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands.
Thank you, Counselor. And Pledge of Allegiance, please, if you'd stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any citizens' comments?
One citizen comment that came in, I want to say it was last week, maybe the week before. Mr. Coates, who lives on Walnut, was concerned about the intersection at 238th and Birch on the west side of 238th, as if you're turning right from 238th, that's how you get to Walnut. More than regularly, cars would park from basically the intersection, onwards, which made it difficult to either get on or off 238th. So, thanks to John and his team, no parking signs will be going up 25 feet from the intersection line back. That's a city code, but it wasn't marked. So that way it'll be marked, hopefully then better enforced to help alleviate, getting onto or off of 238th there. So that was the first one. The second one I want to follow.
So the signs have been installed. So that project is complete and signs have been installed. So
Great.
now it's enforcement.
Thank you.
The other thing, and it was in the weekly update, so hopefully you've already heard about it, but I wanted to follow up on the 238th vegetation that was brought up at the last council meeting, thanks to Cultivate Initiatives that has now been completed. So I worked with them, called in a favor. They wanted some leather gloves to facilitate with all the blackberries. I said, sure. That seems like a reasonable, good price. So they got it done when the county couldn't.
And that is, as you know, with the county taking care of easements means they don't take care of easements. And while we would like the county to do that, we do have to take some steps when we can to keep our city looking the way we want it to look. So nice job, staff.
And I think as a positive aside, Gresham Ford's owner, Bess Wills, heard about it, and she's looking into supporting Cultivated Initiatives as well. So more good may come out of this.
And and Greg has been in conversations and with me, and Bess Wills is very eager to learn more about Cultivate initiatives. And through Greg, we just forwarded her the director, manager, Stephanie.
Yeah, Stephanie Fields, she's coordinator sorts. I know they connected today. I was traced on an email. So
Good. All right. When I know my conversations, Bess has got me on a hotline, and we're going to continue talking because she is a great source in our community. So, well, nice work, staff. Any other comments or Lieutenant Hemsworth, our public safety report?
Hi, good evening. Provided the law enforcement statistics to the city manager, as well as present them for you this evening. There was 153 dispatched calls for September, slightly above the previous month or the yearly average. Self-initiated calls were at 168, which is also slightly above previous months or the yearly average. Non-emergency calls for service were 5 minutes and 34 seconds, and emergencies call for service were at 3 minutes and 51 seconds, which is just slightly faster than the normal average. There was a total of 6 hit and runs. I researched the hit and runs, and they were, as we have seen in the previous months, all unattended or parked vehicles, mostly near the big box stores, but a couple in the residential part, but also unattended. So nobody was in the vehicle when they were struck, basically. There was only one stolen vehicle this month, which was a newer model GMC, not the traditional that we see. There was a report of a couple of vehicles. I think they were mostly unlocked vehicles, but nonetheless, a couple of vehicles were broken into in the Tree Hill condos. They reached out to me, and we did provide them with some extra patrols in that area in the nighttime hours when the thefts occurred. Otherwise, that is all that I have to report, unless the council has any questions.
Questions, Councilor?
More of a comment. Glad there was only one vehicle stolen this month.
actually, I think that was recovered, the recovered stolen. The report doesn't have any actually stolen this month.
Oh.
You are correct. I have 0. So 1 recovered and none stolen.
Oh, I do have a question. There was an accident on 238th Hill, and there was a crane involved. Can we get anything on that?
Erica from our team, the public works supervisor, was say on site with that because there is a large diesel spill. So I think it involves some sort of semi truck that tipped over. It was a county stormwater concern. So we called out county staff to respond to it. But I believe a large truck turned over and then needed help getting it upright again.
Upright. Okay.
It was, as the city manager reported, it was a speeding dump truck on its side that flipped over on 238th. A report was written, no arrests were made. So I would assume, without delving too far into the investigation, that the fault was not deemed to be criminal. So.
Thank you.
One other, just maybe a comment from you. Recently, there's been some what I call really, I think we all like what's happening with the stolen cars and breaking up some pretty significant coordinated efforts, gang stolen cars, the Teslas, for example. How is the county working within some of those joint task force to pursue that? Or you have your own, I suspect, but is that also part of it when you're working with other regions?
It is. We definitely partner with all those that, but previously in the last 90 days or so, on multiple occasions, we partnered with the Task Force at Large, which is Portland Police Bureau led, but also Vancouver Police Department, and I think Clackamas County got involved. The stolen vehicle missions that we talked about before, using pre-rhythm algorithms to try and anticipate a higher likelihood of being stolen and stop those cars with a mitigation plan if they run. Portland as an agency or as a whole has seen a reduction overall through their efforts. They've been doing this for, I believe, about 1.5 years now. They definitely have seen a reduction since 2021, but remember that 2021 and 2022 were unprecedented years of stolen vehicles. So we're unfortunately in the metro area at large still, I think higher, quote me on the data, I think we're still higher than we were in like pre-2020, but it's on a downward trend, which is positive.
Okay, it's going down.
Going down.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think just another reminder for those listening or watching, now or later, that we do have steering wheel locks for those qualifying, I think Hyundai and Kia vehicles. So we do put that out on our website, social media newsletter, but again, something that we partner with the sheriff's office on to help mitigate, again, some of those stolen vehicle issues.
As to help, I think they're only seeing Lene.
Yeah.
Is that true? Or are they watching us?
Do they need to see anyone
Councilor
else,
Min.
Mark?
What's that? Yeah, we're watching you.
Councilor Amend, any comments or questions?
No, thank you very much.
Lieutenant, thanks for being here
Thank you for your time.
and thanks for your work out there. Review of the bills paid, September 23rd in our contracts. Any questions? Consent agenda is the city council minutes, city events, and under the consent calendar is also the new OLCC liquor license. Chipotle, okay. Any questions about the consent agenda?
Isn't that unusual for,
I was gonna, I was gonna ask the same.
you're going to say the
Yeah,
same thing?
yeah.
Unusual for
Like the-
Chipotle,
Yeah.
What liquor,
beer and wine sales,
They
I
sell
believe.
beer and wine?
Yeah, they do
I've
have.
never been.
Yeah,
They do?
other locations, they do have beer and wine.
Wow. Okay.
We're getting an upgraded Chipotle.
And I,
Drink, but I never
You haven't-
seen it.
Is there one at the Gresham one?
Well, I don't know about the Gresham, but the Chipotle ones I've been in other places have had beer. I don't know if they all have them, but I've been in one and even indulged.
and this one should be open, around December time by the end of the year. So I guess when that happens, we can experience it all together.
So the one next to Lowe's, is that the Chipotle?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the Chipotle, and we should get an update on Chick-fil-A end of the month
Where's that one going in at?
next to Chipotle.
Really?
Oh, I didn't see anything.
Yeah, they haven't started construction yet. They got land use,
The Chipotle.
they got land use approval
I
just
didn't
over
know
a year
where the
ago.
locations were.
Okay, so,
Never seen a map where these
We're just
locations. are.
excited because it's within walking distance.
Oh,
for
yeah.
me.
Yes.
I'll follow up with an email.
yeah, we'll follow up that consent agenda item will be followed up with an email. All right, location of delay.
To approve.
Liquor.
Move to approved.
Yes.
Second.
Oh, I second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, resolution on the supplemental budget. So our business manager, Seth Reese. Seth, to walk us through this.
Mr. Mayor, councilors. For you tonight is a consideration for adopting a supplemental budget for the current fiscal year.
And this is an action item.
This is an action item. So first action is to open a public hearing to,
Do we do that right now or after the discussion here? Do we do?
we'll do it now and have the discussion and then.
And then we
the
close it.
meeting And then do the rest.
Okay. So I'd like to open our public hearing on the action for a supplemental budget to our 23-24 budget.
Great. So this is a correction to the adopted budget process. I think I had mentioned this a few weeks ago that we were going to have this coming. Oregon budget law only allows for a 10% change in the fund appropriations between the budget committee approving and the council adopting. And there is exceptions to that, which is if you need to change it by more than 10%, you need to hold another public hearing to give people the opportunity to comment or weigh in on the proposed changes. So what happened this year was we went over the 10% and didn't hold the public hearing. And that was due to some last minute changes to the budget that I didn't catch. We have some guardrails put in around from the approved to adopted where we do a check. That check was performed, but then the changes came in after that check and it wasn't re-ran. So we've made some changes to our process to ensure that that check gets run whenever something's added rather than just at one point in time. And so the funds that were affected were the water and sewer fund. So we contacted the Tax Supervisory and Conservation Committee, TSCC, who kind of runs the budget process for Multnomah County, specifically the city of Portland. They act as their budget committee, but also they review budgets from all over the county. So we reached out to them to see what we should do since it wasn't clear from the statute or the guidance by Department of Revenue. And they said, this has happened before and not just to us. And so they sent over some examples from, so the last time this happened was 2021. Metro and the city of Portland both had to go through the same process where essentially what you do is we are holding this public hearing to roll back the changes that made it into the adopted budget and then reconsider adding those to the budget as part of the appropriation. So there's two pieces. There's a rollback to make sure that we're in compliance with the budget law. And then we will consider individually adding those projects that put us over back into the budget for fiscal year 23-24. So it's a little bit of a technical process. I want to pause here and see if anyone has any questions or concerns about.
It is, it's technical, but all we're doing is backing up, taking out the stuff we put in there that was over the 10% and then redoing that and allowing for the public to comment on that. So, and Seth, as you explain that, there are times in the budget process where you've completed the budget, still waiting for a bid or still waiting for, and sometimes an emergency might come up that you do end up, if you don't make it under 10%, then you do end up having to go through a supplemental process. So that's why it's there. So it helps support the public process of adopting budgets. You have a supplemental process and you have a chance to do a redo.
Yeah.
So.
And it's, and I'll admit that this is more art than science. I've worked for some organizations where anything that was encumbered but not spent when you started the budget in March automatically was reappropriated. The only problem with that is it kind of inflates your appropriations every year. And so you're trying to find a balance between not putting a realistic budget together and not adding too much appropriation, which you're not going to need, but not coming up too short in the process. And so we missed on this year's process doing that. So.
And the important thing is that now you know you're going to add another layer of test. And yeah.
And I'll review kind of by fund, kind of what we're proposing. So in the budget process, the kind of the things that are being put back in are the SCADA project and the utility rate model for water. And those were projects we thought we had originally appropriated in last fiscal year. We thought at the start of the budget process that we might finish those by June 30th, but we didn't. And so we wanted to roll over the appropriations. Same project, doesn't need any new money or additional funding currently. And then we had appropriated $200,000 for well 3 upgrades. And in the process, we realized that there might be some more extensive upgrades that might be needed beyond just the electrical we were looking at. So we added another $70,000 because we had that as part of our unappropriated fund balance. So this this process would put those 2 projects back into the budget. And the reason why there's a difference in how they're funded is the rollover projects fall to beginning fund balance. And so, but the well 3 mechanical was paid out of unappropriated fund balance, but once the budget's adopted, you can't touch that. And so it would have to come out of contingency, but it will it's essentially the same money. You guys, when we presented the budget to you guys, Dawn presented and went through why we needed the $70,000. It's the same $70,000. It's just instead of reducing our unappropriated fund balance and contingency, which are both pots of money that get left over. They're just one you can appropriate, one you can't. So those are the changes that we're proposing for water. And this reflects both the first column is what you guys saw as part of the process. The corrected is removing those projects that put us over the 10% threshold. And then the third column is adding those projects back in, which is why the contingency gets reduced between what we originally proposed and what ends up hitting in the budget. I want to stop here
Thank you.
and see if there's any questions about that.
You know, Seth talks about the art of budgeting and, you know, he and his team are in the midst of audit this week. And if you want to talk about financial wizardry, I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg and things you have to do for financial reporting. So again, just want to thank Seth. He did, you know, catch this and did, you know, right away, we tried to, what's the right approach to resolve it. So I do want to thank him and his team for the work.
Since there isn't very many things on the budget, I would like to comment, though, that at times like this, when little things like this come up, this is when I miss Counselor Dirks, because he always had a way of putting a little fun into this, but also he was very, very good at finance. And he would be able to how would I put it, Greg? He could come back with a lot of very smart comments, but then also jab you at the same time. And so it was just, and he could just make us all die laughing over the whole thing. And of course, this is before Greg, you know, joined our team. But anyway, he just had a knack of being able to do that. So I do miss that. And because otherwise, finance is kind of dry. Did I say something wrong here?
I mean.
Counselor Tan?
Oh, it's good. Okay, you
Did you want the floor, Counselor Tan?
Oh. I think I should shift
For a
seats
living.
here. Yeah, you do it for a living.
I mean.
So do my kids.
Move on, move on.
My kids.
All right.
do.
All right,
Save
so
them,
moving
save
on, moving on to the sewer fund, same
Yeah.
process.
See,
All
Now
the
we're
pro-
talking sewer.
Now
Now we're good.
It's the fun stuff.
Exciting. I'm excited.
Both of the projects involved
I'll
here
let you-
are rollover projects, so they
You
would
can hit
have,
me with it.
again, they were projects we were planning on doing in fiscal year 22-23. We didn't do it, so the money we were planning on spending rolled over to fund balance, and now we're reappropriating that as part of this. So this, the only change here is it's the same SCADA and utility rate model because those are joint projects between water and sewer. The only thing different here is the bigger project, which is the sewer CCTV, which again, we thought we were going to get done, got bids for, awarded the bid, and then the winner declined their option to actually do it. So that's why that one came in kind of later in the process than we would normally see projects come in. Change.
Same budget we approved before. We're just going back and correcting that 10% rule.
Yeah,
So it's the same money, same projects.
this is just giving a lot of what budget law is built around is giving people, citizens, the ability to weigh in on the spending decisions by council or whatever governing body that they're looking at. And so we missed a step to allow the public to have input on this, on these proposed changes. And so this is essentially giving them that chance.
I'm not a wizard on budgeting, but I do know I look at ending fund balances. And if you look at those two columns, they stayed the same. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Counselor Amend?
No, thank you, Seth.
Then hearing no comments from the public, we'll close our hearing. And we have a resolution. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve resolution 26-2023, a resolution authorizing the appropriation of contingency and making supplemental appropriations to the funds.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors.
Thank you, Seth. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of utility rates. Seth?
Yes, something much less dry and more fun, hopefully going to engage with the public works side of your brain rather than the finance side as well. Coming before you tonight, we had originally presented this work on the July 10th council meeting where we introduced kind of the preliminary report from Donovan Enterprises. You guys have been through the steps to update the SDCs. We came back and presented again to talk about some of the utility rates, or actually, I'm sorry, this is the meeting where we're talking about some discussion on the utility rates moving forward, but you approved the rates for January 1st, 2024, and we gave you a teaser that we're going to have some more discussion on how Donovan's work can impact our rates. So this is going to be kind of a recap of some of the main points that we went over in the July 10th meeting, and hopefully you've had a chance to noodle on those a bit. And I'm going to talk specifically about water, but the issues that are coming up and kind of the policy considerations that are in front of the council are similar for both utilities. So the first thing is to notice is that usage and revenue are relatively well aligned. 21% of our water is used by residential accounts. 21% of our revenue comes from residential accounts. So there wasn't anything that was off between usage and who uses and who pays. So that's good. What was surprising was how little the single family residential pays. Most cities, that number would be 60 to 80% of your revenue would come from single family homes. We have a large percentage of mobile home parks and apartment complexes for our residential, so that multifamily is larger than single family homes. And we have a healthy and diverse business community with a couple of users who use a lot of water. And so business almost uses and pays for as much water as resident, both single family and multifamily residential combined, which is unusual for a city our size or really any size, which that's great, except when it's not. So in looking at our customer base, and kind of the way to illustrate this is, we have 57 business accounts. We have, I think, 600 some residential. The top 10 business users use as more water than all of our single family homes combined, which leads to the increased volatility within the system. So I'll go to, there we go, see? Here's a look at our business accounts by usage. And you can see that 38%, almost 40% of our business revenue comes from 3 individual accounts. Those are Pressure Safe, our washing plant property,
Odessa.
I thought it was Odessa, but I wasn't sure. And then the Wood Village Business Park, which that one is really 12 to 15 businesses that are all just built under the same meter. So those 3 businesses use a lot of water, which is good because the cost of us pumping an additional gallon of water is very low. So it actually helps keep costs down for everyone to have a couple large water users. The issue that we have is that making any change to, so for example, if we wanted to reduce the volatility by increasing the base charge, what that would mean is that everyone who's kind of below this line would see a big increase in their bill. These people would see a decrease, but it wouldn't be a significant decrease to them. So we might take 50 of the people and 50 of the businesses and double their water bill. And 10 would see a decrease, but it'd only be a 10 to 15% decrease. So that creates some problems from a rate setting perspective. If you're going to double 90% of your people's bills and you're going to reduce the other 10% by only 15%. You're going to have a lot of people upset and nobody really happy with what you're doing. So that's, again, it's not a bad thing, but there's a flip side to having some large users that use a lot of water that bring in a lot of additional revenue. That means we can keep rates lower for everyone. We covered this at the July 10th meeting, but I just want to kind of reiterate that a lot of what we're trying to do is reduce volatility. That's one of the goals in rate setting process. In the short term, 85 to 90% of our costs are fixed. If we only were going to produce half as much water for the rest of the year and only sells half as much, there's not really any way for us to reduce our short-term costs by that much. We could fire half the staff. But then you get in the problem of who's going to send out the bills and how are you going to get the safe number of people to actually work on the system. We could do some things longer term, but in the short term, a lot of the costs are fixed and we don't have a lot of ability to influence that. One of the things that we talked about at the July 10th meeting was the kind of implementing a best practice to pull the rates, the 4 units that are currently in the water-based charge out of the water-based charge so that it would give people who use less than average, less than those 4 units, more cost control, because that's something we've heard consistently over the years is, especially for people who are lower income, who don't use a lot of water, they're looking for ways to reduce their water bill and they notice that they're paying for 4 units, but if they only use 2, they still pay for it because it's wrapped into the base charge. So where this all kind of all comes together is that if you pull out the 4 units, that means your base charges are lower, which means more of your money comes from the volume charge, and that can vary pretty wildly depending on how hot your summer is. You can see 20 to 30% more or less revenue between a dry summer or a wet summer. And that makes it challenging to do your long-term financial planning of this is how much money we need. We might come up 20% short on our water revenue sold if it's a wet summer and nobody waters their lawns. Part of the reason why we decided to put the splash pad in, because we need to get more water out of the ground when it's hot. So that was a consideration that we've talked about, and there's this trade-off between volatility and stability and also fairness and the ability for users to have their control over how much their water bill is and what's kind of wrapped up in the base. So we went back and did a bunch of scenarios. We took a look at our fiscal or our the last 2 complete calendar years we had. Becky did a lot of work on playing around with, do we have a high base charge or, do we set the base charge at $24 for water? Do we leave it at $28 or $29.84? Do we drop it to $17? And what does that do to those kind of the split between our revenues of base versus volume? And what we found is that there's not really a way to reduce the volatility of our revenues through having a higher or lower base charge. So ideally, from a revenue stability point, you'd like to have a higher base charge. But because of how skewed our revenues are, both the fact that there's not a lot in single family residential and within multifamily and business, there's a few large users that drive the majority of the volume revenue charge. You run into the problem of we might have to double to really have a meaningful impact on the volatility for water and sewer. We would have to double or triple the base charge for business and multifamily, which would be unfair to a lot of smaller businesses and smaller units. And we wouldn't necessarily recommend that we do that. We wouldn't recommend introducing that amount of unfairness and impact to solve a revenue volatility problem. So, so then we went back and revisited and kind of played around with, okay, what's the best way to balance all of kind of these considerations based on the feedback that we had gotten from you at the July 10th council meeting. So because residential is small, but has in terms of dollars, but has the most accounts in it, Pulling out the base charge from water and making that entirely zero units included in the base didn't really have a lot of effect on the volatility of our revenue. There just wasn't material enough to make a big difference. And so based on that, what we're recommending is that we actually move forward with pulling that out of the water base. Currently, for single family residential sewer, we don't have a volume charge. It's just all base. What we currently have is base charge is 67.83. And there is a volume charge on multifamily and business, but none on single family residential. So we're also proposing that you should take a look at allowing for there to be some volume charge on the sewer side. The bottom two are minor tweaks to kind of true up some discrepancies that existed in our fee structure. For some reason, the fire hydrant meter base and volume charge was a little bit different than non-residential, even though it's the same water and the same purpose. So we're gonna change those by a couple dollars in order to make them the same. And the multifamily discount, there's a multifamily pays less of a base charge, but we couldn't tie it to a percentage or a policy decision. So what we did is looked at other utilities and kind of what the cost structure is or fee structure is and why the cost structure changes. So most of our comparators within the region had a multifamily base discount of 10 to 20%. And the reason for that is it's easier to bill 180 units of the byway that are on 1 meter because you send out one bill and you're dealing with one person for collections versus sending out 180 individual bills. And so that's kind of the rationale for why that is. This would just set it at, instead of its current 95% of single family base, it'd be 90% per unit of the single family base. So I've thrown a lot of numbers and stuff.
And
This is
one thing to note on this,
Yeah.
on the sewer charges for single family residential, they're currently paying a very high base charge. So this is actually reducing that to closer to what multifamily is paying for a base charge and then adding the consumption piece on the sewer side. So it's not just taking their base and adding consumption. It's a significant reduction in the base.
Yeah.
Because they seem to kind of be overpaying a little.
Let me open this up for discussion. So, Councilor.
Okay. One of the factors that I put into this many years ago, back in a previous life as a director of public works, is that like in race cars, if you want to go faster, it costs you more money. Okay. And so I kind of put this into perspective. If you want to use more water each month, it's going to cost you more as you hit these different points. So, just throwing this out there, if you hit 75,000 gallons, your rate's going to be this much. If you're going to hit 100,000, it's going to cost you more. If you go to 125, it's going to even cost you more, and that kind of thing. It's hard for me to hear in here because there's just tons of echoing going on. So at some point I'd like to put in some kind of dampening in here or something. But anyway, is that in your calculation at all with this?
We talked with Donovan about either doing, so we did discuss it with him. We're not making a proposed change in terms of one philosophy in approaching rates. What you're talking about is conservation rate is kind of tiered pricing. And as you go up in tiers, you start paying more per unit used. Right. And that helps drive conservation. One of the problems with most water systems is the marginal unit produced of water is actually relatively cheap. So the more water you sell, the more money you get, but your costs don't change. If we sold, John was able to hit the streets and sell an extra 10 million gallons of water. Our costs for doing that are a little extra chlorine and some reagent, but there's not a significant cost. So the financial part of if you want to base it off of costs, then it's the exact opposite than if you want to adopt some conservation rates. And so we talked about that.
Well, the electrical cost goes up because your cone of, what am I thinking of, John? Cone of influence. As you draw more water away, you're drawing it out further. And so the cost of bringing the water up out of the ground is going to end up costing you more in electrical costs. That is a factor.
The other component, and I know Councilor Amy raised her hand.
Cone of influence.
So I'll keep this one brief. That makeup of our big users, it's 3 users. That's the other thing. If they were to leave our city,
We'd be in trouble.
yes.
I get that.
The consideration is the ability for both individuals to pay and the willingness of business to relocate to the lowest cost for the raw materials or utilities that they have for production. Short term, it's probably not going to matter, but long term, if you were to drastically increase the cost for, say, Odessa or Pressure Safe, they might either move or decide that they're not going to wash cars at Odessa at this facility. They'll go somewhere, and it might make financial sense for them to wash somewhere else, cheaper water, and then bring them here.
Yeah. We don't want that to happen.
We don't want that, and then that's part of the
And I get
balance.
that. We want to be good for business.
And so because of when we ran the different models for business, because of that imbalance, we really couldn't see a lot of it. The other kind of factor is inertia. So right now, nobody's on the business side is really complaining about our rates. We don't feel like it's a drag on business or necessarily a particularly good incentive for high water volume uses business to move here or to move away. And so
How did you
staff
do?
thought was absent a compelling reason to change it.
Seth, when you did your analysis, and you did some comparisons with our rates with other municipalities.
Yes.
And our residential rates were lower. Business rates were slightly higher, if I remember right.
Slightly higher, but not.
So another question then is that with them using that water for car washing, they're recycling it, I take it. Is it a regular car wash? I hope.
It's a full reconditioning facility that they put in 2016, 2017. I'm not sure if it's a gray water system or not. I don't recall, but it's a full reconditioning facility with 24 washing bays, for example. So they're basically taking all the auction cars. Dealers and others are paying them to get them basically retail ready, which includes like full details, et cetera. That's what's driving the consumption.
Yeah. So I'm wondering about what does that do to our wastewater usage? And does that affect, because if you put nothing but water, gray water down into a sewer plant, that actually worsens its ability to function properly.
Our tolls we're a neighborhood to Gresham and its treatment plant, even with the mix of businesses and things. And we do have a pretty strong industrial pretreatment program. I don't recall that Odessa is part of that. So whatever they're discharging clearly doesn't meet the standards for industrial pretreatment like we do some other businesses.
There was a concern that came up about Camping World. This was a few years ago about how they allow RVs to come in and dump, and there's a lot of really bad chemicals that can screw up your wastewater system that people haul around in RVs.
Yeah.
And during the summer, there's a line outside there for RV dumping because they don't charge. We asked Gresham if they ever saw any uptick, up or down, like, is there any concern with that? And they said, we don't even notice you guys.
They're
So
not.
it was.
And Councilor Amon does have her hand raised.
Yes.
Thank you so
Councilor
much.
Oh,
Sorry.
Councilor Amanda, I don't see you on my screen, so I can't tell. So why don't we start with Councilor Amanda and then Councilor Dan?
Okay, sorry, I just have a clarifying question because I want to make sure, I know we've gone over this before, but I want to make sure I understand it. So we're decreasing the base cost that everyone has to pay, but slightly increasing the volume costs. Is that what
Yes. So
I did it?
Yeah, you did it. So the way we set this up is we didn't want to shift a lot of costs between the classes. So we kind of kept the model so that the amount of money we were collecting from business stays the same. We
Yeah,
weren't shifting a bunch of costs around between the user classes. But within the class, we wanted to adjust the rates to raise the same amount of revenue given 2 years of usage. So that
Okay.
we weren't trying to get a bunch more money or lose a bunch of money. We kind of wanted to just run it so that we had the same amount of money from each class. And we didn't get down to zero, but we got within a reasonable margin of error.
Okay.
Like 2 to 3%.
yeah.
Um,
And then,
so-
sorry, what does CCF stand for?
That's 100 cubic feet of usage.
Okay. So basically anyone with 12 and over is going to see an increase. Well, no, sorry, 9 and over is going to see an increase, right? No,
We set the average to about 6.
Okay.
It's just over 6 when you take a look at it.
I
So
see.
included in your packet's kind of a projected water rate schedule that kind of shows what you guys adopted for January 2024 underneath our kind of hold it steady methodology, and then what it would look like if we had adopted this in 2024. So the water base charge currently is going to be $29.84. And then for every unit above 4, you pay an additional $2.13.
I see. Okay. Thank you. That's super clear. Thank you very much.
And then under the new system, the base charge is 17, but you don't get the 4 units, and the unit charge is $2.95. And so you pay, if you use 4, you're paying an additional $12, which means you're paying $29 for your water under either scenario. But where it affects it is the users that use less than that 4 units see a reduction in their water bill and also on their sewer, because the sewer, again, we set it so that because the average is 6, it was $67. We set the new base to 30 and the volume charge to 520. So if you're still using 6, you're still paying about the same amount. It's just if you're using less, you pay less. If you're using more, you pay more. So really what this is doing is within residential, it's shifting costs from people who are already using less than what's included in their base to people who are using more than what's included. So that's where you'll see someone who uses three units of water sees a drop in their bill of $26. Someone who uses 12 units will see an increase of about $24.
Let's go on to Counselor Tan. Question?
I think Seth answered my question because I was trying to figure out the mathematics behind the new proposed rates with the reduction in the cost of water and then the sewage rates, but you explained it well, so.
And an important distinction on the sewer is, summertime people are watering gardens, watering lawns. That doesn't go into sewer. So the idea is to use what's called winter averaging. And so we would take what their average is October through March. That would establish essentially non-watering season. That's what's generally being going down the sewer. So that would be their average, that or the lower. There were some cases where their winter average increased compared to summer. Maybe they have, guests, from other parts live with them for some months or whatnot. But it would be the lower of the two, either your winter average, or if it's lower, it would be the actual lower.
Which is also part of the reason why we wanted to keep the rates the same now, so that we could tell people come 2025, April 2025, you're going to be billed your sewage based on what happened the previous 6 months or lower, so that if they want to save money or want to be able to have that control, then we've let them know ahead of time that for April through September of 2025, you're going to be based, your bill's going to be based off your usage from October 24 through March of 25. So that way there's a little lead time, because otherwise,
Love that.
it would be right now matters for your next.
Yeah.
So,
Not watering my grass.
yeah.
You're baby.
Any other questions? I do have a couple of comments, and one is that I do like, I think most of us here, I like the idea that if you conserve, you save money. And that our single family and multifamily have an opportunity to reduce consumption and save money. The second piece is the volatility issue of it's there. And I'd rather have a little more volatility and keep our rates lower for our residents right now, because they're going to get some other increases that we can talk about here in the next item. But the volatility issue for me, I think that's a budgeting issue, and keep that ending fund balance healthy and the contingency healthy in water. Because if one of these two outfits leaves town or shuts down, then we're going to have to make up the difference. And then it'll give us time, as long as we keep those ending fund balances healthy and the contingency stuff.
Or you have a unseasonably wet summer and are just selling less water. We talked about this, and again, Seth, it is a budgetary thing. You kind of plan for more ending fund balance and reserves.
Yeah. So.
And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and we'll come back to my last point is, so we talked about the volatility and we told you we'd bring back some solutions. So one of the solutions is continuing to move more of our capital to a sinking fund. So we can't necessarily, it might not be practical to affect volatility based on where we set the base and volume charges. But what we can do is we can try and reduce volatility in other areas. And so one of those areas is the amount of capital we spend every year. This is our capital spending in water and sewer for the last 15 years. And you can see there's some spikes. And those, we've already started putting money away for replacement of certain equipment. If we do more of that, then it essentially flattens out our volatility, because we take what might be a big cost in 1 year and we're saving up for it over the course of 10 or 15 years. And you're not getting those big 1 year needs to recover rates to fund capital, your cash funded capital. So continuing to do that, go through that process will help mitigate some of the volatility. And then, as you said, Mr. Mayor, we can also do that by just setting a higher goal of contingency, so that if we have a down summer, if one of our major users decides to reduce water, we have the ability to weather that and spread out the rate increases or decreases over time. And then the other thing is just recognizing and having the council be comfortable with the fact that our rate structure might be more volatile than our neighbors, which might mean that in any given year, if we might have to, if we have a couple down years, we might need to have some higher rate increases. Because we talked about the fact that we could try and build a rate structure to account for something bad happening, like one of our major businesses leaving. But the idea is why raise rates now for something that might happen in the future? Why not just deal with that when it comes up, recognizing that if anything significant happened, we would have to deal with it at the time. And that's not just bad things like, losing a big producer. Maybe someone moves in who uses water, or, Odessa or Pressure Steep expand operations. We get more volume revenue, which means that we don't have to increase rates as much the next year because we're spreading our costs over a wider base. But again, trying to anticipate and plan that and deal with that in the rate structure, it makes more sense to just kind of have more flexibility, and rather than, say some of our neighbors adopt 4 to 5 year rate structures. And that was the initial idea with bringing Donovan in, was we would adopt a rate structure based on the capital improvement plan that came out of the master plan process. But we've been doing a year. We've never done a multi-year rate increase, at least not in recent memory. We can continue to just be flexible year to year and look at what the needs are, rather than adopt. There's no reason we have to adopt a multi-year rate increase.
Be nimble.
And again, Councilor Amen raised her hand.
Councilor Mend, any other
yes.
questions?
Yes, I do. I'm drawing a blank. Hold on just a second. Oh, so let's say those do go up, Seth, like there's some volatility. Like how much, could you say how much you might anticipate, like a regular, like a multifamily home or a multifamily residence, like their rates would go up, or is that hard to tell?
We haven't had the need up to this point to have anything more than within 2 or 3% of inflation. And Donovan, when we talked to Donovan, he said that his kind of analysis of where we're at was that we were he usually gets brought into water and sewer systems that are experiencing severe financial distress, which is
Sure.
why they bring a consultant in. So he was kind of like, I don't know why you guys don't need me to like convince your council to raise your rates by 20% in the next 3 years, like, which is what he's used to doing. He said, you guys are actually in very good financial health. You don't have a lot of debt. You have healthy cash balances. Sewer has some challenges, but it didn't even make his top 10 list of challenges this year that he's had
Okay.
people he's consulted with. So
Yeah. So it's not going to be like a shocking number. Like we go from, kind of this tier to here, right?
well,
Like the-
so what I'll say is that I don't think it's if we were to have our 2 largest businesses leave, that would be a shock. We would be losing probably 15% of our overall revenue, and we'd have to make that up. But those aren't shocks we can or should plan for in our current rate structure. It's kind of for what we know and what's kind of normal and reasonable. I don't anticipate a need, but if there's, if our wells start to run dry, if climate change really ramps up over the next 5 or 10 years, if there's, there are any scenario where that happens is going to be difficult to deal with regardless of what our rate structure is. It's events that are outside of our control that we are going to be shocks, not just for us, but for everyone.
All right.
And
Thank you.
In the terms of, not just we lose a user, but maybe they do conservation efforts, et cetera. Again, that fund balance, we can try to flatten that out, spread it over next couple of years to make up the difference. So it's not a shock to the rest of the community.
For us
That's
as a
helpful to
council,
hear.
for us as a council, our job is to make sure we got that buffer. When we adopt a budget, we make sure that we have enough ending fund balance to mitigate any surprises, as you're talking about, Councilor Amend, and I think that if we keep our eye on that, and staff is already doing that, we should have some time to react without just slamming people with a large water sewer increase all of a sudden.
And one of the things that we got from Donovan, besides his colorful personality and slide deck, is he put together a utility rate model that allows for us to project future utility increases and adjust either your cash balance, the amount of cash finance capital, and the utility rate you're billing, to be able to smooth out those things. So that's one of the goals that staff had from this, was we wanted to have a tool that could allow us to smooth our rates with some more certitude. And so we really have a 15 to 20 year model to be able to deal with some of the large capital projects that might come up in the next few years, anticipate those, and do some rate smoothing. So part of this exercise was to be able to have the tools for staff to be able to do that and have it be reviewed by someone outside of our organization and conform to kind of the best practices within the industry.
Good. Other questions? Are we getting a pretty good sense on council about the concept here is that we try to keep the base low, and we live with some volatility, along with the understanding that we're going to have some mitigation plans to deal with volatility throughout. And it's a fluid situation, but so to speak. But we keep that discussion going, and staff keeps us informed upon how we would respond to a sudden departure of a couple of businesses, et cetera. If that sounds good, then we're not taking any action tonight.
No.
And what next steps?
Yes, right after, I'd have one more point to discuss, which is the senior program. I know we're hitting you with a lot, but Greg said we don't have much else on the agenda. You can hit everything tonight. So we have a senior discount program. It's in our municipal code. It offers a 25% discount off of the base for water and sewer. Staff would like that program to go away and be replaced by something that's more workable. So, and it also matters because right now, the value of the senior program with our current base rates is $288 a year. With the idea of lowering the base, it also lowers the discount. So it would go from being a value of $288 a year to $140. So in order to kind of offset that, and we also talked about how the current program isn't means tested. We don't annually verify that they're still doing it. And we just verify not even that they're 65, that just that they have some form of retirement income. And at the time with that program was implemented, we didn't have any other low income assistance program. So what we would, when I say eliminate, what we would like to do is work with Jeff to see kind of what we're allowed to do for grandfathering in, but kind of sunset or sunshine. But even if maybe look at the idea of allowing people to use our existing utility assistance program, because right now you can currently get your bill paid twice per year, means tested. Convert the program from a base year discount to you get to apply. If you're part of the program now, you get basically one additional utility bill paid through the program. So if you're not low income, you just get one. If you're low income, you could get, and a senior and a current participant, you could get three, which would actually be more beneficial for low income seniors and would, because then we would also reach out to the 52 participants, because I don't think that all of them, I know all of them don't participate in the utility assistance program. And we probably have some low income seniors who don't participate because they just don't know about it because they haven't read the newsletter or any of the material we've sent out. So I think that we might redirect funds to people who are more in need, do more education and outreach in that way. And instead of administrating two programs, we would just be doing one and it would kind of be wrapped into that. So that's kind of the other proposal we wanted to get some feedback on from you guys.
So sorry, you're saying the low income and senior discount would be the same?
It would be
We don't qualify, John, so you know.
The senior low income would get up to 3 bills paid per year. Non-senior low income currently qualify for 2.
Okay.
Senior not low income would qualify for 1. So they still get some benefit, and we'd have to work with Jeff to make sure that we are allowed to do that. But that would be the idea, is that we would fold the programs together and phase out the seniors who don't have financial need out of the program once their accounts are closed. And so that eventually it would be all means tested.
And so then they would determine which months they would,
They'd have to apply.
oh, so apply for that upcoming month.
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
so currently we allow people to apply once every 6 months, which is twice a year. We'd have to work it out, but probably be once every 4 months. If you're a low income senior who's currently participating, you could apply for the program.
So you have 52 now and they're applying every 6 months?
The 52 now don't apply at all. They applied once and they're in until they close.
They're part of the
We don't have more
retired
parameters
rate
around
program.
that.
So and that's really what it's called, is it's retired rate, because you could be multimillionaire paying a discounted rate if you're drawing a retirement income. And that's part of the challenge. It's not means tested.
And we don't have
So
it.
we could have applied.
You know
We
what?
could have.
Could have, would have.
Couple of millionaires sitting here.
Yeah, but do you need to, you know?
Jeez.
So, and that's the other thing, is that once someone applied,
We'll have to come back here tomorrow, won't we? During business hours.
there's no trigger for us to reevaluate the program.
We'll get in on the.
But with this.
With this new program.
Before they close this door.
So
Hey,
And then
I'm
with
sorry, I'm
also
having a hard time
requirements.
because there's people talking over each other. I'm having
Oh,
a hard
sorry.
time hearing. Derek, could you say your comment again?
Oh, I was just saying that we would have more parameters. So every time they would apply, there would be certain requirements that would fall with each application.
yeah, and part of the application for the current senior discount is there can't be any non-senior adults living in the household. But they only verify that when they initially sign up. There's not a check-in or impetus to re-verify that. And we don't want to be invasive and be like, have you had anyone move in with you, you know? And so it's not a well-designed program from an administrative perspective. So.
Counselor Men, we apologize.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we both do.
No, it wasn't. No, please don't apologize. There was just some overlapping talking and it's hard to, like, the microphones kind of switch
Yeah.
interestingly, but really fast, I do want to say thank you
guys
very
to
much
you.
for allowing me to be on Zoom tonight. It's really helpful to what I got going on. So thank you.
Yeah. So
So-
the next steps.
Yeah.
So if we get feedback from you guys that you like the proposed rates, we'll move forward with some communication and outreach. And then we would bring back to council in this next summer a proposed actual form. So this is an example. We would bring a formal rate proposal to you guys for approval for implementation in January 1st, 2025. But we also don't want to start telling people that the sewer rate volume charge is coming if we're not going to. That's part of the reason why we want to check in and get feedback from you guys. But you're not locked in. We would just start doing community outreach around those. And then for the senior part of the program, we would work with legal counsel to prepare kind of a municipal code update change that would kind of be folded in January 1st when this relaunched. And again, that would have a communication and engagement and outreach effort tied to the 52 current participants.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, we're going in the right direction, Seth. We'll wait and see the proposal in our sometime in the summer, June or July.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors.
All right, next item is our fire service conversation. And so Greg, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, continuing the theme of heavy hitting discussion topics, we're going to discuss kind of fire service and potential next steps to take.
And this is just discussion too, no action.
Correct. Looking for direction in which path to kind of walk through, as hopefully kind of the staff report made that clear. And again, nothing is set in stone. We're just looking for direction to start following so we can signal other cities, maybe start taking initial steps and providing you more feedback on what that looks like. So quick background, just to recap, and anyone out there in TV land. The city used to be with Fire District 10. That's a rural fire district, and it served a lot of the cities in this area. And in 1995, the cities moved away from that and joined Gresham Fire. Part of the reason was it was felt, and this is from reading the materials, minutes, et cetera. I didn't live it. It was a high cost for the service, and Gresham approached the city saying, we think we could do this for less. What no one anticipated at the time was measures 5 and 50. That also went into effect right at the same time that you lose, tax revenue of 286. You think maybe you can pick that up by increasing your rate. That was stopped holding card the same time everyone moved to Gresham Fire. And it worked until it didn't, which is essentially now. So we have an IJ with Gresham, and we've had that ever since, and it's done in 10-year increments with the last renewal in 2015. And that was a fairly contentious negotiation looking at costing service models, et cetera. In anticipation of an upcoming renewal, whether it is through Gresham or a different model, the cities engaged with what was called the Safer Council, and that was the 4 cities, so Wood Village, Troutdale, Fairview, and Gresham. And it really studied, the current service model, the issues, the needs, as well as how fire and, emergency services could be provided. Because as we've learned, fire over the many decades has transitions from fires to medical incidents. We did a study in 2013 that showed about 80% of calls were lower acuity medical, not mean that all of them weren't non-emergency. It was, whether you get there 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes didn't necessarily change the outcome of that incident. We updated that study just recently with the USC, and that ratio has stayed pretty much the same, where essentially you get 20% of your calls are fire, vehicle accident, critical incident, or you don't know until you show up. And then about 80%, you don't need necessarily a big fire truck with multiple people on it to handle the call. So we've done that study. We've met a few times and looked at what are the options moving forward, because the current agreement does end coming up here. So in talking with the other city managers, I've been discussions with some of their staff. This is as I believe I know it. So things are still fluid in many of the cities. Gresham is, they've done many reports and studies, excerpts been provided to you in the past. They're looking at a financial firm to look at the financial impacts of like a fire district, a parks district, a lot of other kind of service districts. So they're trying to find a financial firm to look at those impacts. They've released an RFP, didn't get any bids. They're trying to re-release it, something we're quite familiar with. We've also heard they're considering putting that operating levy on the May 2024 election. So they ran it in November. It did not pass. They're looking to run it again in May. That's what we know from Gresham. We don't know, are they looking to join District 10, a new district, their own thing? This is what we know. For Troutdale, they have a public safety advisory committee and they're meeting on both law enforcement and fire. About a month ago, they met on fire. Had District 10 there. Former Chief Snyder was there talking a lot of stuff, what we've been talking about over the past few months. And it seems, and again, their committee hasn't made a recommendation to their council, which I think is anticipated end of the year time, January. That district seems to make sense to further explore. And that's where Fairview is at least in conversations with their city manager. Their council hasn't taken action, but their city manager is very interested in moving towards District 10. In terms of looking at districts as the lowest barriers for entry, there's still barriers, and we'll get to those here momentarily. So that's where our neighbors are more or less at, because some options, it's great to be in lockstep with your partners. Others, you don't necessarily need them to move forward. And here are some of those options. So status quo, we continue to pay Gresham. All the studies we have done point to it. As much as it's still costing, it's still a cost-effective, efficient quality service. Want to make it clear there is nothing wrong with Gresham Fire. And we're also looking at other options as Gresham, the other cities are getting in that, financial pinch. We can look at Fire District 10, which is an existing fire district, or create a brand new district, which has, more impact and influence on that service model and service level. So going to dig into each one a little bit more here. Right now, our current cost with Gresham Fire is about 500. I think it's 52,000. I put $550,000, and we get one more year with the 4.5% cap on the increased amount. So we know next year is going to go up 4.5%. Let's just say, you know what? We work with Gresham. We say we want to contract with you. We're good. I put in a 6.5% increase, knowing that we've heard. Both from their electeds and, other staff that they want to increase costs, they need to increase costs. So I put it at 6.5. That's a number I put in. I haven't talked with Gresham about that number. Over a 10-year agreement, that amount would be about $1.1 million at the end of that 10-year agreement. So double what we're paying today. Everything else equal, that means no new development for the cities, no remodels. Our current assessment, 3% increase would be about 1.5 for property tax revenue. So right now, our property tax revenues are just over $1 million, and we're paying about $550,000 for fire. We'd be paying 1.1 million and getting 1.5 in revenue. So that gap it squeezes. Again, we know there'll be new development. We'll know there'll be remodels. That's just trying to keep, some kind of apples to apples. The other thing to consider is right now we don't get a seat at the Gresham table to talk about service levels, service operations, way to contain and control or otherwise influence cost. More than likely that would remain the same. We wouldn't get a seat at that table. There are options, though, to increase revenues, and we've seen it from our neighboring jurisdictions, whether it's we've talked, we still have, you can increase franchise fees, you can do an operating levy or public safety fee. Forward Village, for an operating levy or public safety fee, that would have to go to the vote of the people. Not saying we would do that. It is an option to look at funding for public safety. So that's, in a nutshell, status quo. District 10. That would require, amongst some other things, a public vote of the people to join back to District 10. Now, their current rate is just under $286 a thousand. And looking at an average single family home in Wood Village, the average assessed value is about $205,000, meaning that for the average household, their property tax bill increased just under $600 for that first year joining. Looking again at our total assessed value, that tax rate, it'd be about $975,000 for our bill or our cost. And here's the interesting thing, District 10 right now primarily contracts with Gresham for its service. So hypothetically, in 18, 24 months, we put to the people, hey, District 10 makes sense. They vote yes. They are paying $600 a year for the exact same service they're getting today. Because that's who District 10 currently uses. And more than likely, through the next period, we'll continue to use them short of, Gresham saying, no, we're no longer going to service you. That doesn't, in our look, doesn't make a lot of sense financially for Gresham, but it's something that could happen. But other things that could happen is, if we're part of District 10, we get to vote on their board. So there is some amount of impact, influence. When other cities vote to join them, and if they do, it may be possible to then basically, assuming Gresham joins District 10, I'm not saying they would or have talked about it, but let's just say the 4 cities over time join District 10 and District 10 is now the new fire service. There could be opportunities everyone gets a seat at the table and you can make incremental changes over time. So as you're bringing on, current employees and whatnot, you got to have your protections and your job classifications. And as you're bringing on new people, as people retire, move on, and you can craft new things to better match, the need, which is medical response, while also maintaining your ability to respond to those critical incidents in a timely manner. The other thing this does, when I say, it's our cost of $975,000, it's the community-wide cost. The city, again, in today's dollars, saving $550,000 that we're not paying for fire service that could be reallocated to what the community desires and wants. I mean, maybe it's, enhanced law enforcement, park service, recreation support, kind of whatever that thing is. So, yes, the people would be buying fire. They're also buying, our general fund, a lot of breathing room that could do more things. So a new district, a lot more steps to take than joining an established district. In a very brief nutshell, and Jeff knows a lot more about this than the few bullet points here, but basically you need to do economic feasibility, a service needs not being currently met by other providers, operating budgets. You have to do a petition. It goes to the county, multiple hearings before you even get to a vote of the people. So you're spending years outlining this, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, setting all this up for the voters to approve. So it's a lot more steps to take compared to joining an existing district. The difference being, if it's created new, you create what the new is. You also have the challenge of while let's just say the people vote to approve it, great, we're collecting resource, we're going to build this, you still need to provide current service. So you may have to take some of your assessment dollars for your new district and find a current provider until you spin up the new service. And this one specifically works best with other city participants because let's just say Wood Village votes on it and we're going to do this. It's going to be hard to have a Wood Village fire district that's effective compared to, Troutdale, Fairview, others join in, you get economies of scale. So I want to pause right there. Let you have questions, discussions about kind of those seem to be the tracks to follow. And again, what we're looking for is direction to staff to say which one seems most intriguing to you for us to start marching down and bringing you back more information to feel comfortable making a decision of, yes, this is how we want to provide fire service in the future. So I'll pause right here for questions and discussion.
Oh, let's say we decided to go with something other than creating a new district, and then, we stick that out for another 10 years. Do we foresee that ultimately we will end up having to create our own district?
What we see at some point down the line is, and we've talked about this at budget, public safety costs and property taxes. Before measures 5 and 50, property taxes were 115, 120% of our public safety costs. Now they're somewhere around 87%. And that's going to continue to decline. So at some point we'll be put into a position where we're struggling to maintain current service levels while paying for our contracted service providers. Going to a district gets it off of our general fund liability and essentially is a way to increase the overall tax base, with the current constitutional limits put in place. Did that answer your question?
Does
Counselor
anything
Clark.
prevent us from reaching out to our friends across the river, like Camas and other places like that?
I'm gonna phone a friend and ask Jeff because of being out of state. I'm not sure how that.
Do you
would
mean,
function.
sorry, do you mean as far as emergency response calls coming from Camas?
No, I'm saying the district. Operate the district and make it larger, make it so we're not just landlocked by a river. Invite our neighbors across the river to join a district.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I don't believe that. I know there's been at least some talk of Clackamas district potentially because Gresham abuts that there may be synergies there. I have not heard of talk of, across the river to like a mega district. And again, I'd have to reach out to Jeff to see again, because it's crossing states with different taxing.
The reason why I bring this up is because they're doing that with the metro, with the light rail.
Mhm.
And so why can't we do something like that with fire districts?
I can ask that question, how mechanically that could work.
Yeah.
Tualatin Valley, I know is still, the other most, maybe, reasonable to begin talking with too, but it's, but the across the river, maybe, I suppose it, but I think you need to get a legal opinion.
There's a lot of other smaller cities over there too.
Oh, yeah.
That can be in.
Counselor Mann?
I'm sorry, I don't have any, I just had that clarifying question. And Jeff, I didn't mean to interrupt. My apologies.
And just to clarify too, District 10, joining District 10, or building our own district, creating a new district that might include all 4 cities, we still, all communities have to pass. Our voters have to accept that, whether we're going to join it or start a new one. If we're going in the fire district direction, we do have to have the coordinated effort to reach that. I guess, maybe we win, we get a levy, Troutdale doesn't, Fairview does, Gresham doesn't. So it's the fire district, the steps are very similar to moving in that direction. But because Fire District 10 is already intact, it makes it much more realistic. If we want to go in the district direction to utilize Fire District 10, which is already established, and they have resources.
I also know that the Port of Portland is also a part of that because our CNAC, Citizen Noise Advisory Committee, there's several people in Vancouver that serve on that. So they're a part of the group as well.
Let me, well, this, as you know, we're going to have to make a decision on this.
Sure.
And
We need to start moving forward in one of those 3 paths.
yeah, and
It can
one
help
of the
signal
things,
the other cities too, plus give staff some direction to work towards, because as was said, our people will need to, have a say in it. And there's a long lead time to start educating why this is being brought up and why we're doing this, or at least asking.
I like all 3. Does that help?
well, here's what I think.
Just saying, I do.
Is that, again, this is a year away that we have to have a contract. If it expires in June of 25. One of the things that I know mayors have been talking about is that we continue to move forward with discussions with Gresham, because realistically, in 1 year, we're not going to have this sorted out, and we need fire service.
Well, they were
So-
saying, what I read though, sorry,
Go ahead.
they were saying that they would have a contingency for us to continue for 1 more year.
That's
In
correct.
Conversations with their city manager, she seemed
Yeah.
willing
Yeah.
to,
That's what I'm saying.
do an
Okay.
extension of the current agreement. So it's not a big overhaul.
Yeah.
So that we all understand that we're going to be, we know we need to begin, continue conversations with Gresham about extending an IGA to provide us with fire service. And we can have some more discussion on this, but at the same time, begin to study a fire district and what a fire district would look like. Again, the advantage of the fire district, I don't want this to be, I want it to be understood, is that if we were to pass a public safety levy in Wood Village, that would pay for the fire district, which then creates the revenue in our general fund to be distributed in other ways. Because right now, we're writing that check to Gresham right out of our general fund. And our property taxes are being compressed. And our collection of property taxes is going to continue to drop. So long-term, if we can get that cost of the fire service into a special district.
Yep.
That gives us a little more bandwidth to cover other rising costs that we're going to have in the city. Or if we want to do some other programs for the city. So think about it in that way.
And just to kind of add to the conversation a little bit, the idea of going out and pitching something to a vote of the people, whether you'd have to do that, whether you're doing Fire District 10 or a new district. The real decision is Fire District 10 is easier administratively and would take less time. But the conversation is you're going to be paying more and getting the same thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Versus forming a new district is a lot more complicated administratively, needs more lead time. But then the conversation isn't you're paying more for the same. It's we're going to try and do things differently and do a different service model that we hope is better and or more efficient than what we're currently experiencing. But either way, it's a difficult conversation to have and to actually go out. And the other part is whatever decision you guys make, if it involves going out and pitching it to the electorate, staff is at some point going to be limited to involvement of what can happen. And that's going to have to be primarily driven by the elected officials
And
volunteers. Either plan.
Great.
We need to manage cost at this point. It's managing costs while we're working towards a fire district that we can modify the delivery system so that it's more efficient and we can control cost. In the end, we have to have a different delivery model of responding to we can't roll trucks. Our fire about 3 times a month, we get a fire call. Everything else is EMTs, emergency calls, but we're rolling trucks. So we have to get a different delivery model, as Mitch Snyder, Mitch Snyder. And that's how these fire districts throughout the country are surviving, because everybody's having trouble in fire districts. So we're going to manage costs while we move towards a way to have a fire district that we can sit at the table and talk about how are we going to deliver services. So
John?
It's a big push though. This is going to be a challenge for us in this city and all our cities. Councilor Mend.
I'm so sorry, John, to interrupt. I just want to underscore some of the things you're saying. Like, I do really value the services we have now, and at the same time feel like there is more an innovative and efficient solution, and also that allows us more collaboration with fire services as a community. And that's something I love about Wood Village, is that we have our own identity and our own needs and and just like with the foliage on 238th, we figured out a way to take care of that beyond the cumbersome bureaucracy. And I feel like there's a better solution for us as citizens than just continue. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a balance between it, getting help from Gresham and then kind of having our own agency, I guess. That's all I have to say. Thank you. And I think we asked Jeff a bunch of questions and then didn't give him a chance to speak. So I just wanted to say that too.
Is Jeff on? Okay. And then you may want to speak now, Jeff, or
Well, I was going to respond to the question about going across the river to find partners. And you could do that via interagency agreement, but you couldn't create a governmental entity without legislation in both states, because there's not right now a way to have a cross-boundary single governmental entity. But you can do it by interagency agreement, which is what they've done with light rail and with the airport and with other cost sharing and stuff. We have school district clients and ESD clients who do that too. So that was the only comment I was going to make.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yes.
Other questions or thoughts?
Well, it sounds like if I can recap, I mean, certainly district, whether it's 10 or kind of exploring new is appealing. And so potentially what a next step is we as staff, can look at, here are all the steps that would take with a brand new district and really detail that out and put together a reasonable, realistic timeline for that, as well as what District 10 could look like. And it would start reaching out to District 10 and say, what are your thoughts of us potentially joining you, thoughts, concerns, and then kind of bring that back to further digest. How does that sound?
Well, yeah, I think that's what we're
Creating
talking
a new
about.
District is
It sounds
what I
great.
think is,
Ideal.
yeah.
And then I think we're all, Counselor Men, you seem to be right in line with wanting to pursue the steps and a timeline realistically to have a new district, correct?
Yes, with an asterisk of, I just feel like things could be tailored more to our community than they are now. And I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but that I feel like we could have more agency there. So I'm going to say yes to answer your
Okay,
question.
thanks. And I want to just clarify something too. It doesn't mean that when we begin these extended, talks extending the IGA, that the issue of delivery model can't be talked about. It will be because it's better for Gresham too, but they have bigger problems to move to a different delivery model than we do.
I mean, they've got direct union concerns. We're not at the table. They're not our concerns. We can look at it from an outside in and what could we do if it were new? They're not in that seat. So they have other concerns than we do. Not again saying maybe they couldn't work deals and make something happen.
But I know there's all four mayors. We all know this delivery model is not what it needs to be. So mayors are there. But there's
It isn't that we don't appreciate what we have either.
well, and I'll just say this, it's really hard to get people to vote for something that's going to cost them more money that they're already happy with. So, I mean, the challenges are going to be out there as we start looking at a campaign. So that brings me to the other point is that we do need to start. And we've talked about this, but start getting that information out to our citizens about the fire district and start talking about cost and not throwing out a number, but begin talking about we have to look at the additional fire service.
And like you said, and this was brought up during SAFER, if the people feel it's a good service, they feel it's a good service. And I want to again reiterate, Gresham it's a
Education
good
is what I wanna
service.
say about.
Tweaks to make sure. The important part is we're not in financial trouble yet. 10 years from now,
Right.
that's a different conversation. And I'd like to believe we can try to get ahead of that so we don't
Give them that.
have
information.
issues 10 years from now that we continue to set up the community council, the organization for success. And that's part of the narrative to tell.
And we always talk about Gresham as being the first lemming off the cliff
Hit me.
because of their financial situation and low permanent rate, but we will eventually find ourselves in the same situation Gresham is, which is going out for public safety levies or looking at fees. We're behind, they're ahead of the curve in that term, in terms of that.
In that regard,
Seth, sorry,
go ahead, Councilor Men.
Seth, can you say more about that? Like what about Gresham and like where they're at?
Yeah, Gresham back in when I worked for Gresham from 2006 to 2009 and did their long-term financial planning, and they have known for years and have taken steps, over the last 15 years to increase franchise fees. They have gone out for, I think, 2 public safety levies in the last decade.
Public safety fee.
Public safety, and right now they're doing a public safety utility. So they've known based on their projections that they were going to be here. We're not there yet, but it's the same projections we have. We're where they were 15 years ago. So
And we don't want to be where they are today.
but eventually we will be in the same situation if we don't do something like changing our delivery model.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it looks like we've had, I think, a good conversation here.
Yep, I have
But it's all
marching-
about the same
marching
page for
direction.
now. Thank you.
And I do have a couple items before we adjourn, if that's okay. I'll keep them quick.
Go ahead.
One really cool new thing, our new website launches tomorrow, 9 a.m. So it's going to be loaded with a bunch of new features where you can opt in to get notifications for agendas, a calendaring event. So great way to keep the community engaged of upcoming events, meetings, et cetera. So tomorrow, 9 a.m., it's launching. We try to keep some of the critical areas like how to pay my bill pretty much in the same area, but there's a lot of new features and a whole awesome new look. Really excited about it.
Yay, thank you.
We have that in front of you. Sorry, Councilor Amen, you don't have this, but there is a ask from the is Dia de los Muertos from the I can't remember the organization's name. They're up on 223rd.
Celebration of Life. Hispano Cathedral.
Programa Hispano, thank you. They're holding a Dia de los Muertos event November 1st and 2nd, asked if we'd be willing to be a sponsor for it. So there are 3 sponsorship levels, I believe at 250, 500 and 1,000. This is something we could either fund out of a community event grant, although it doesn't necessarily fit that criterion because they'll be holding it technically in Gresham. You also have council discretionary funds, but we wanted to bring this to you since it didn't quite fit an existing parameter for a program. It also seemed worth a quick discussion and your thoughts on support.
Any questions? Yeah, willing to support this?
Very much.
I'm good.
At the
Yeah.
$500 level, that's, I think it buys a cultural dancing.
Well, let's do a thumbs up for $500.
We will make it
Yeah.
happen. Thank
All
you.
right.
And then last, been working for several months with the Grand Ron, trying to set up another council to council meeting. As I know it today, hasn't changed yet. October 26th is when their council is available to come here from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for updates and a luncheon. If that doesn't work for the majority of you all, we'll work to continue to work on a schedule.
I'm sorry, what time?
October 26th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
That works for me.
Can I get back to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I say something really quick?
Please.
This event, like, I'm so glad I took last year's off. Like, it's really impactful and just so important. And yeah, I'm just like so pumped about that. How many people, Greg, do you think will be coming from their council?
I think they're going to try to get the majority of their council here. That was the intent. So certainly I think, the chair, I think they have 7 on their council. I think usually we try to get about 5 of their council.
Okay,
Councilor
exciting.
Clark, is that going to work?
So that's a Thursday. We're going to move over to a Thursday?
No, it's a,
It's
An addition.
it's an
Oh,
addition.
okay.
So it'd be just a 2 council gathering.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
okay. Yeah, I'm clear.
And we'll do a lunch and we'll figure out what lunch is and we'll be the host and do some.
And that's when we'll plant a tree
Correct.
for Catherine Harris and make a little ceremony out of it.
Correct.
I'll let you know
That's
tomorrow.
lovely.
Any other? I have just, Greg, anything else?
No, thank you.
Just East County Summit is this Saturday. And that's got Mount Hood. And I don't have much more information on that. But it's an East County Rising and it's a summit for the entire day. And I didn't see that.
Okay. Anyway, if you've heard of that, and I have not had a lot of contact, but that's happening at Mount Hood. Next thing is that you may or may not notice that when you walk in this building, you have a picture on the window.
Oh.
So
Not know.
I want to thank the staff for working on that. So take a look.
Now?
I thank
Yeah.
the staff, but I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Did I see your picture?
Oh, yeah. You take a look because we all look really happy.
We have a family picture up there too?
What's that?
Our family picture's up there?
No, your picture, your picture.
Oh,
You're just your,
what
your-
happened to our family picture?
oh, the group picture?
Yeah,
We didn't
I
put
don't
that
I'm
up.
just curious.
Well,
We
we'll-
could, if you want to, we could put that.
No, we don't have to put that up. I don't.
Yeah, just well, take a look at the pictures and staff did a nice job of designing it, figuring out how to get that up there. And you know what? It's, you know, when I see those myself, you know what it does to me? It puts us out there in the public and other people see it and they say, I might want to be a counselor.
You're right. You're
And,
totally right.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks staff for that. The last thing, and Counselor Tan, I'm going to ask you to just take your counselor hat off here. And I want to just say quickly for a public service announcement, about 3 nights ago in our home, we got a call at 4:00 in the morning that said that our account had been hit for $14,000. And we're both, you know, my wife is, you know, she's on top of that stuff, and we're watching for every scam we could think of. But we started in with that. It ended up being a scam, but we were very close to perhaps releasing more information than we should have. And Counselor Tan, I gave her a quick call. And she absolutely knew exactly and walked us through it. So it's a public service announcement for maybe everybody to be very careful and call your banker, call somebody and shut it down real quick. So again,
Yeah.
Counselor Tan, do you want to, you know, you deal with this routinely?
It's become a huge thing now. It's what people do. And they've coming up with more and different types of scams where a lot of people become victims to these different scenarios of scams. And these scam artists are brave enough to even send, you know, fraudulent checks to the branch itself to deposit into one of our members' accounts. And you know, they just have that courage. So they're willing to do whatever extent it is necessary to make that easy dollar. So it's, and you know, as humans, we are trustworthy of people and that's where we become victims.
They had us just inches away from giving some data because they had us hooked up to the fraud division in the IRS in Washington, DC and everything else. And supposedly they had these screens flashing around. But anyway, pay attention. Well, I guess I don't have anything else, Counselor Clark.
Nope.
Okay, Counselor Amen.
Nothing here. Thanks.
Okay, I guess other than good night. Thanks for joining us remotely.
And then really quick, before we go, the Pumpkin Fest is coming up,
Oh,
right?
yes. October
Correct.
8th.
October 28th, 11 to 2. And
Okay,
I
and what time do we
believe
need to be there as
Caroline will be
counselors?
sending an email when to come to help volunteer, set some stuff up. If the weather's great, it's going to be a fantastic event with a petting zoo, a pumpkin patch, trunk or treating. So
It's cool. All
And
right.
do we wear costumes, Greg?
You do.
Yeah, you,
yeah, you don't wear one. That is another thing. Teresa's
Only
Pet-
the Easter bunny.
pet store is actually hosting a pet costume contest too.
Oh,
So
fun.
there's been a lot of drawn interest in this event, so it should be big.
that should be a lot of
What time
fun.
does that start?
11.
11.
All right. Well, we got our calendar set for a couple of meetings and any other questions? If there's not, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take good
Good
care.
night, Counselor Mann.
Good night.
Rabbit ears.